You and I are going wine shopping together. You can find a sensational bottle of wine for criminally low prices. Let's get started exploring and tasting new wines together. Hello again, friends. I am so excited to just curl up with you all and talk about and enjoy a glass of beautiful bubbly with you. Unfortunately, wine consumption is decreasing more and more each year, especially here in the US market. But one area of wine that's actually increasing is in the consumption of sparkling wines. More and more people are wanting to explore and taste all of these different really cool sparkling wines that are available to them. You know, champagne is amazing. It's beautiful. Nobody's arguing that it's not, but it is unfortunately pretty expensive. We can't be drinking it every day of the week, I wish. But again, so many other options out there that are also very affordable. They're made from hundreds of different grape varieties. They're from different regions all over the world, made in different methods. So today we're gonna focus on one method, one style from a specific region, another French region, not Champagne, but Burgundy. And their style of sparkling wine that's known as Crémant de Bourgogne. So already picking apart the name of this wine, Crémant de Bourgogne, it's giving us some clues. First is Crémant. That's gonna be the style in which this wine is made sparkling. We're gonna get to that in a little bit. The other clue is where it's from, de Bourgogne, of Bourgogne, or of Burgundy. Burgundy is a small region centrally located in France, and it is famous for being the producer of arguably the most prestigious and certainly the most expensive wines in the world. But it's not really famous for its sparkling wines. These wines that are very prestigious and expensive are typically red wines made from the Pinot Noir grape and white wines made from the Chardonnay grape. Burgundy, however, does have plantings of other grapes like Aligoté, a white grape, and then a red grape called Gamay, which you're primarily going to see in the most southern part of Burgundy, a region known as Beaujolais. And those are 4 grape varieties that are allowed to be put into Crémant de Bourgogne, this beautiful sparkling wine that they make there. There's actually a little surprise when you look back at the history of sparkling wine in Burgundy. In the early 19th century, it was actually common practice to make sparkling versions of the most famous Grand Cru of the Côte d'Or. So the Côte d'Or is that main part of northern Burgundy. It's known as the Golden Slope, which is then broken into the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune. And these are where the Premier Cru, the Grand Cru vineyard sites are. They're very small, and that's where the very expensive wines come from. There's very little of them made, and there's a very high demand for them. It's said that Napoleon III was presented with sparkling versions of Clos de Vougeot and Romani Conti at a dinner in Dijon in 1860. Pretty cool. These were known as Bourgogne Museau Rouge. And they were all the rage at the time. Over 1 million bottles of these were produced, but eventually, of course, it did fall out of fashion, and people wanted their Pinot Noirs not sparkling. They wanted those nice, straight, dry, still red wines that are still produced today. Crémant de Bourgogne is a regional wine, meaning that the grapes that make up these sparklers are coming from all over the region of Burgundy. Now, you would expect up in the northern part of Burgundy, which is actually up closer to Champagne, it's known as Chablis, where they make only white wines made from the Chardonnay grape. You would think an area like that would be where most of these grapes are coming from to make these sparkling wines. They'd be a little more similar to Champagne. But unfortunately, Chablis and a lot of the Côte d'Or are very expensive. So these properties are not the best places to be sourcing their grapes from to make this beautiful, affordable bottle of Crémant de Bourgogne. Now we're seeing a lot of producers looking further south to Beaujolais to get some of their grapes. A lot of producers are feeling that Beaujolais will be the engine kind of driving forward the Crémant de Bourgogne train as it becomes more and more popular, and they're making more and more bottles of it. So let's get into this style that I mentioned, the Crémant style. So Crémant on a label means that this sparkling wine had to be made in what is known as the traditional method. It's also known as the Champagne method because, of course, Champagne is the most famous region making wines in this style. It's also the most labor-intensive and expensive way of making sparkling wine. Another very popular method known as the tank method or Charmat method. That's what Prosecco uses to make their sparkling wines. It's gonna be a little bit easier to control because it's all made in pressurized tanks. So they take their still wine, their base wine, it's already a fermented wine, and they pressurize everything in tanks to create that carbonation. You have to do this the natural way and the traditional method. So what they do is they take their base wine or their blends of base wines, and they put it all into this very bottle that you see right here and that you pull off the shelf at your store or gets served in your restaurant. So they're taking that blend of base wines and they're putting in sugar and yeast. And sugar is food for the yeast. So the yeast is just consuming all of that sugar, it's converting it to alcohol, and it's releasing carbon dioxide, or lovely happy bubbles. And so it's doing all this, and when there is no sugar left to consume, the yeast dies, and all of those sad yeast bodies just kind of slip down into the neck of this bottle because these are kind of tilted upside down on an angle. So all of those yeast cells go into the neck of the body. These are known as the lees. And they'll sit there for an extended time depending on the winemaker's vision. And these lees can really impart lovely textural notes, aromatics, kind of leesy, bready, yeasty, doughy pastry notes, brioche, marzipan. And so depending on how long it's in there, it's going to give less or more of those aromas into the wine. And then when it comes time to take those dead yeast cells out or disgorge the wine, they're going to put the neck of this bottle upside down into a glycerin ice bath to freeze that plug of dead yeast cells, and then top it out, top off the wine with a little more base wine, maybe a little more sugar if they're adding more dosage, what's known as dosage, into the wine. This is a brut, so it's gonna have very low dosage, 6 grams per liter probably, which means that the wine is going to come off very dry, very clean. So that is the traditional method of making sparkling wine. And it's called Crémant in France because they cannot call this champagne. Champagne is a legal term. That wine has to come from Champagne, the region itself. It has to be made in very specific ways, very specific methods, very specific times with very specific grapes. A lot of rules. So they can't call it that because this is, of course, Burgundy. So they're calling it Crémant de Bourgogne. You'll see this in many different regions across France. Another very popular region that makes Crémant is Alsace, a lovely little region on the border of Germany on the eastern side of France. And so that's Crémant d'Alsace. In a previous BYOB episode, I did a Crémant de Jura. This is a really beautiful region in southeastern France, kind of getting closer to the border over there. And they're all doing it in this traditional method and then saying exactly where it's coming from that region. You also see Crémant de Limoux, that's from southwestern France, and that's actually the region in which this method, the traditional method, was discovered, and then that was taken up to Champagne, and now they are very, very famous for it, of course. But Champagne and Pinot Noir tend to be the workhorses of these wines. You can see more in Gamay, of course, and some of the rosé sparklings, the rosé Crémant, which this producer, known as Le Burgundy, which I got at Trader Joe's for $10.99. I've seen it at so many Trader Joe's. I think it's in every Trader Joe's. So should have no trouble finding this. There's a rosé version of this as well. And this wine is employing all 4 of those grapes, the Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Aligoté, and the Gamay, of course, leaning into the white varietals a little bit more. It's so fun because, again, this is a very expensive way of making sparkling wine, but you see such value in these regions outside of Champagne. Partly because, I mean, it's the marketing of it, right? I mean, Champagne is touted as the greatest sparkling wine in the world. And I'm not gonna say they're wrong, especially when it comes to certain producers, but you can have so much fun discovering these other little regions. And then there are other regions all over the world that are also employing the traditional method. Franciacorta is one in northern Italy, and they make absolutely stunning, gorgeous traditional method sparkling wines that you absolutely must check out. We'll do an episode on that later. We're focusing on Burgundy right now. But these, I think they're just gonna get more and more complex and more sophisticated as it becomes maybe a little less regional, a little less spread out, and they start finding their footing and becoming a little more nuanced. I don't wanna say that they start getting more rules, but I mean, this is just lovely. It has that soul of a traditional method sparkling wine. And by that, I mean, there's this lovely organic note to it that you don't really get in tank method sparkling wines, the Crémant method sparkling wines. All of that lovely textural stuff I was talking about, this pastry dough, almond, fabulous brioche, and it's got a lovely chalkiness to it as well, this crushed seashell that you get in a lot of Champagne as well. Lovely ripe orchard fruit, apple, pear, it's got Meyer lemon, beautiful delicate floral notes as well, little white flowers, salinity, a crunch to this as well on the nose. I just love that pastry note though. And these wines have lovely, fresh, high acidity that you know I love. But again, very dry, very low dosage on this. Again, probably around 6 grams per liter of residual sugar. So you're not perceiving any sweetness on this wine. She is dry. And you get all that lovely texture. A lot of producers have their bottles actually sit down with Crémant Probably not this one because this is meant to kind of get out there on the shelves and get into your glass as quickly as possible. But there are a lot of small producers that let these guys sit down in the bottle for 6 years before they release them. So it's easy to kind of write these off as, you know, not as serious as champagne. But there are some Crémant de Bourgogne producers that take it dead serious and make some really, really stunning stuff. This is just so fresh and playful and fun, so lovely. I used to get this bottle all the time. This is fantastic, especially if you're starting out in your journey of learning more about wine. I mean, this is $10.99, it's not gonna break the bank, but it's still gonna be enjoyable to drink. And it's still gonna give you a lot of those earmarks of what a traditional method wine should taste like as well. If you love Prosecco, Prosecco is such a wonderful, popular sparkling wine to drink. If you love Prosecco and you're like, I want to try traditional method sparkling, what's that all about? Try this guide. This is a really, really wonderful introduction to the world of traditional method sparkling wines from a really fantastic region. And as always, the versatility with sparkling wine and pairing is just bonkers, out of this world amazing. This is a great sushi wine, great with any fish dish, especially fish that are a little more delicate and light. Maybe a nice buttery sauce. Absolutely stunner with this. Great with pasta as well. Some lighter pasta dishes that have a little bit of lemon component, maybe an herbaceous component to it as well, because there is a little herbaceousness in this glass. God, it just goes with everything. Cheese boards, oh yes, a beautiful aged cheese with all those crunchy little enzymes in them. Yes, let's go. I really can't think of something that this would not pair well. This is a good salad wine too. Like salads can be so tricky to pair with, especially with astringent vinaigrettes, but this would be absolutely fantastic. I even dare you to eat this with steak. The acidity will cut through it. It'll be fabulous. Bubbly and steak, I will die on that hill. It's so good. And then of course, there's always the classic. People love to do champagne with fried chicken. Fried foods, again, this acidity just like cuts through all of the fat. So if you do want like a fattier, richer dish, Crémant de Bourgogne, absolutely delicious with it. Let me know what you think. Pick up a bottle of this, grab the rosé, it's delicious as well. I think it's just such a fun wine and so fun to explore all of the different sparkling opportunities out there. It's always great to grab a bottle of bubbly off the shelf, whether it's a gift, whether it's to celebrate, whether it's just because, hey, we're alive, we're doing it, you deserve some bubbles in your life. Grab a bottle of this, $10.99, really sweet deal. And you get to learn a little bit more about some different sparkling opportunities out there for you. So let me know what you think about Crémant de Bourgogne, explore other Crémant throughout France, and let me know what you think, and cheers. Until we open our next bottle of wine together, I hope you keep exploring and trying new wines.